First United Methodist Church.
And I'm Brother Jarod.
And I thank you for joining us for our family craft and devotion time. This past Sunday, the Sunday school lesson was on the parable of the Good Samaritan. And today's craft is going to go along with that. And we're going to begin with our craft time, actually. And so we will be making little first aid carriers. For that, we need some foam, scissors, hole punch. We have some yarn here, some Sharpies, Band-Aids, our first aid supplies, and some key rings, carabiner type object. And our first step is I'm going to cut mine in half. I'm going to make a little one, and Jarod is going to make a big first aid pouch.
It's going to be much bigger.
Much bigger than that. And so now we're left with two rectangles roughly the same size. And I'm going to trace that outline that I want on this first one. And what I am going for is a rectangle with kind of like a trapezoid on top. Kind of like a luggage tag or a gift bag tag. So two straight parallel lines. I'm going to make it a little bit taller. Yeah, exactly like that. Two angled lines and one horizontal line.
And it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it does not. And I am just going to trace that once and place it over my second piece of foam. And that's how I'm going to cut it, how we're going to cut it. If you wanted to draw your second rectangle out, that's totally fine. But if you wanted to go ahead and make a pattern for your kids to follow, you could do that. If you wanted your shapes to be slightly different for whatever reason, you could do that. It's not an exact science. And so once you get it cut, you end up with two of the exact same shapes. We want one to be a rectangle, so I'm just going to cut off this top portion. So just cut straight across from corner to corner, and that leaves you with a rectangle. And place the rectangle on top of the other portion, and you'll see that the two rectangles line up, and then there's this little tab at the top on the back side.
Yep.
And then once we get that part done, we take our handy dandy hole punch and just go around the edges, making holes.
Make sure you don't go too close to the edge, otherwise you'll cut at the end and you won't be able to thread the yarn or the string device you use.
Right, because you'll only punch through a little semicircle, and that won't do for this project.
And if you have younger ones, you might want to go ahead and do this for them. We're using a harder material, foam, and it is a little bit more difficult, but use your best judgment.
Yes. And you want to make sure that you have a good hole in each corner. So we're punching through both layers of our foam here, making nice complete circles. And spacing really doesn't matter. Like I was saying earlier, these can be close together, they can be further apart. The width between them doesn't really matter. We're going to be putting Band-Aids in here, and so a Band-Aid is going to be bigger distances anyways. So, my last little hole punched. Once you get that part done, you take your yarn and cut off maybe a couple feet, foot and a half.
It depends on the size of your container too.
That it does. So if you have a bigger pouch that you're making, you want a longer piece of yarn. If you have a smaller one like mine, you want a smaller piece. This is length I went with for mine. And then if you run out, you can always tie more yarn to it. And you don't even have to use yarn. You can use ribbon, you can use string, jute, whatever you have at home. We also discovered that it's a little bit easier if you take tape and just tape around this end. This is not a necessary step. It's a step that just makes it a lot easier because yarn tends to fray a lot. The tape will keep it from fraying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right.
Okay. So we're going to start at this top right hole and push our yarn through both holes and pull it to the end. And we're going to tie it. Like so. Now our goal is to sew along these edges, along our holes. So we pushed up through that one, we're going to push down through this one, making sure you go through both holes and just pulling it tight. Once you've gone through that one, you go to the next hole and do the opposite. So you're pushing up through it.
And I have messed it up already.
How did you mess it up already?
I wasn't thinking.
It's okay. If you mess it up, it's not permanent. You can go back and always correct your mistakes.
Yep.
But you're just doing the opposite of whatever you did before. So you're just alternating. Once you get it done once, you're going to go back through and do the opposite. So see how there's gaps here? We're just going to fill in those gaps. So you pushed down through those holes, and we're going to push up through this hole.
And even though we're doing this the second time, I am still behind Kathy, but that's okay.
When you make a larger pouch, it takes more time to do because you have more holes and more ground to cover. And we're going to take our end that we begin with and our threading end, so to speak, and just tie a little knot together. Just a little basic knot to hold it tight. Then do a little double knot. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut off my extra. So once you get it all tied off and trimmed, we're going to take our hole punch for the last time. And on our tab portion, we're just going to punch a hole in the center. It's just through one layer. It's right at the top, or as close to the top as you can get it. Set that back to the side. And we're going to take our extra yarn. Jarod didn't really have much extra, so he's cutting himself off a new length of yarn. And I'm going to take our little hook or carabiner, whatever it is that you have. See how this opens up? And just keep it closed for now. Make a loop with your yarn. Push your loop through your carabiner and pull your ends through your yarn loop. And pull your ends tight. So you're making a little knot like that. Just pull it very tight. And then push your ends through the hole at the top of your pouch. And pull to where this is only about an inch and a half, and just tie it. If you didn't want to make a key ring or whatever you have available, you can make this into a necklace. You can just make it longer. You could not even bother with this part and just keep the pouch in your book bag or purse. Whatever works in your situation. And we're just going to cut it here. What's going in here is going to be a couple of Band-Aids so that you can have them at the ready to help when someone's in need. And so who do you think would benefit from something like this?
Someone who's hurting or who's in pain.
Mm-hmm. I know when we work with the kids, they just spontaneously bleed sometimes. They just have cuts. It happens. And so you might have noticed that with your friends. Sometimes you just get hurt and it's just a little nick, but it's just something a little Band-Aid would do to help out with. And so it's good to have a few Band-Aids with you at all times in case that happens, so you can help your friend or help your neighbor in need. We're going to give Jarod a couple Band-Aids of his own.
Yes.
There you go. See, the bigger pouch, you can fit more stuff in there. Yep. So he could probably get some Germ-X, like a little thing of Germ-X, maybe some Neosporin. I don't know if you can carry that at school, or Sharpie, maybe some gauze. So see, different little things that could go in there. Other first aid items that you're allowed to have at school can fit in there.
Not scissors, but like pencils, things that you need to help others.
And there we have it. We have our little first aid pouch. You can attach this to your book bag. You can attach it to your purse, your computer bag, and you are now ready to help your friend. You're ready to help your neighbor. And we know to help other people because of what Jesus told us in Scripture. He was meeting with his disciples and some religious leaders at the time, and the religious leaders asked Jesus, "What's the greatest commandment? How shall I inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said, "Love God, love your neighbor." And they replied back, "So who is my neighbor?" And this is what Jesus had to say. And this is coming from Luke chapter 10. And I'm going to begin reading in verse 30. And this is the NIV translation. Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, the Samaritan took pity on him. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. The wine would have been a Neosporin of the time. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out some money and gave it to the innkeeper, saying, 'Look after him, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you may have.'" What did the Samaritan do that was different from the first two people?
Well, he stopped and took care of the man.
He stopped and took care of them. Now, a priest and a Levite, they would have been some pretty important people at that time. They would have been kind of like your pastors and your lay leaders, so to speak, the people who help out at church. And so I'm sure Jesus' listeners, what do you think they thought about those people?
Well, they probably would have expected them to stop and help the person, but they didn't.
It was a Samaritan who did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point in time, we all know times change, but in that particular point in time, the Jewish people and the Samaritans did not get along at all.
No.
They lived in different places, they married different people, they had different religious practices, and so they really did not like one another. And so in this story, it was a Samaritan, someone who they would never expected to be helpful, someone who they would have considered an enemy, who stopped and helped the person. And so that reminds us that we're supposed to care for everyone. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if they look like us. It doesn't matter if they believe the same things as us. When someone's hurt, we help them. And we help take care of them, even if they might be our enemy. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy thing to do. But that's what the story of the Good Samaritan is all about. Mm-hmm. Helping those who are in need.
Loving our neighbors.
Loving our neighbors, no matter who that neighbor might be. Can you think of a time where you were helped by a neighbor or a stranger? But one time I had a flat tire. It was on the side of the road, pulled over, and someone helped me change it. And I know how to change a flat tire. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm strong enough to actually get the lug nuts off of the tire to do it all by myself. And so I appreciated that stranger's kindness in helping me in that moment of need.
I was in the Netherlands and I didn't have enough money. You have to change currency when you're in different countries. And I was at the McDonald's at the airport and I didn't have enough money. And I remember a few strangers who I didn't know at all, they offered to help pay for my meal. So I was very appreciative of those two Dutch travelers.
So at home, discuss with your family different ways that you can safely help strangers or help those in need. Rely on your parents' wisdom on this because they know how to take care of you best. So there's an emphasis on safely with that. But discuss and share different ideas that you might have for helping others.
Yeah. Share them with your guardians as well.
Yes, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.